Today, I bring my homebrew magic items to life. Hi, I'm Seb and I make stuff. I'm a big fan of making props and handouts for my players, as I believe it gives them something visceral to hold and brings them more engaged into the game we're playing and invites them into the world that I've created for them. It's much more interesting if one of my players tries to steal a bunch of letters or find something on a body to actually be able to hand something across the table. As a DM, I can use props, letters, and maps to reveal secrets, send my players on wild goose chases, or give them access to something very powerful if they put it all together in the right way. The next level would be working magic items. So I jumped online and bought a pile of the cheapest UV pens that I could find. The ink from these pens can only be revealed when hit with UV light. Next up, we're going to grab a container. I'm using an old Pokeball print that was meant to be an SD card holder. It fit perfectly once we trimmed off the excess from the cap. And now time to prepare the housing. If I was to do this again, I'd probably do it digitally with my kit bash method, but in this case, I took the Dremel to it and hacked it up. I broke it a couple of times, but fixed it with super glue and pretty much just kept hacking away until everything fit in. Once I carved it out well enough to fit into a nice little bed, I then had to cut a hole for the light to come through on the top piece of the ball. Once I've got the hole drilled in, I'll double check this with a dry fit before adding some super glue to hold everything in place. Once the whole thing's together, it's time to make sure that the hole that I drilled is in the right place. So I trim off a bamboo skewer and press it through. And we have light. So after masking up the light hole and the button hole, I hit the whole thing with a grey primer. After this, covering it all with a silver spray paint. Now that everything's dry, it's time to remove the masking and double check that I didn't ruin my light. And we're in luck. I came in with a silver paint to touch up some of the missing bits and pieces. So my original plan was to try and glue the head of the skewer onto the button, so this would stay in place and be able to be pushed down as a button. This didn't work, so I changed to a key system that you'll see later on. Next I took some coins that I found on Thingiverse. I had these printed out a while ago, so I decided to add them on as some little details around the button. Now for the button itself. I took a little plastic costume jewelry gem and trimmed off the end to be flat. I took a little bit of UV resin and stuck this onto the top of a bamboo skewer with some UV light. This sets very quick and I find it a bit more easy to use than super glue sometimes. I added some more resin to the base to help hold it on, but also to the bamboo skewer, as I wanted this to look more metallic than wood in the end, and this gave it a flat gloss finish. I then trimmed off the skewer and made sure that it would fit as my new key style button. Now that that's working, it's time to start adding some more details. So I got some super glue and some more of the UV resin to stick a star of Palor on the front of my device, as I'm running a wild mount campaign and one of my players is a priest of Palor. You could easily do this with super glue, but I find that the resin it makes it a bit easier for me as it sets so quickly. Now to add a few more details. Again, finding some things from Thingiverse that I'll do my best to link in the description if I can find them. I start sticking things on and kit bashing a design. Next I take a few more of the costume jewelry crystal pieces and start gluing them in where they fit on the design. A few of these are going to need some trimming to get into the holes, and then I'm going to have to trim a few of the holes to fit these in. Now always dry fit before adding glue, because there's usually a few little tweaks you'll have to make. I then use my trusty UV resin to fill a few of the gaps around the edge, before coming in with a brighter silver to paint some of the details. Now I'm obsessed with these little crystals, so I'm going to add a whole heap more around the eye of the light. I'm going to hold these in place with UV resin, so I put a few little globs in, one at a time adding in the jewels, and hitting them in batches with the UV torch to hold them all in place. and then I repeat the process a few times. Okay, this prop is starting to come together, but it's still looking a little bit bland. So we'll grab a bright gold and hit a few of these spots that we hit with silver earlier to make them stand out a little bit more. And then we'll go around and highlight all the edges of this design. While I've got this bright gold out, I think I might add some highlight edges around all these shapes just to give this thing a little bit more pop. And then covering up a few of the mispaint spots around the crystal on the back, before adding the same gold highlights around the top of the device. So as I said earlier, I wanted this to look kind of like a metal key, so I hit it with a bright silver. Before grabbing my Soulstone Blue technical paint to give some life to these plain crystals. I love this stuff for gemstones. Combined with a blue ink, it makes some really great effects. It's tough to see on camera, but you'll understand what I'm talking about if you try this method yourself. Now I just have to collect up all the bits and pieces that I've spilt during this build. And just like that, I've got a finished magical prop. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, considering a lot of it was just bits and pieces from my bits box, thrown together and made on the fly. I have some future plans for a much more powerful version of this prop, using a UV torch and a pile of milliput. For now, this will be it for my first prop. It's going to bring a world of fun to my tabletop game, and it's going to add an entirely new mechanic to the puzzles in the handouts that I give my players. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time on Seb Makes Stuff.